Right. Good to see you today. It is time for lesson 5.3. 5.3, we're going to talk a little bit about what we've talked about in the last couple lessons. So 5.3, and today we're going to talk about inequalities. So when you think of inequalities, what do you think of? The word inequality is dealing with when we talk about something that's not equal. So when you think about something that's not equal, you have a couple options. The first option is that it can be bigger than, it can be less than, but it can't be equal to. So when it's inequality, that means something's going to be bigger than, less than, or equal, and equal to is not the option. So when an angle is bigger, when a side is bigger, we're going to be able to compare those. Let's review. In an isosceles triangle, what did we learn about an isosceles triangle? When we saw an isosceles triangle, remember, we said these two lines were equal. Then what do we know about these two opposite sides? We learned something because of the isosceles theorem. It was that if the sides were equal, then the angles were equal. If the angles were equal, then the sides are equal. So that is something that's going to come in handy here very briefly for you. So keep that in mind as we kind of go into this next lesson, part of the lesson. The next part of the lesson talks about remote interior. So if you recall, when we learned remote interior, what did we learn? We learned that x is equal to 1 plus 2. We learned that these two angles, the remote interior angles, are going to be equal to the exterior angle. So these are things that you have learned in the last chapter, chapter 4. Today in chapter 5, we're going to learn some more things that we can interpret and use. So the first thing you need to make sure you understand is that you understand that there's a comparison. There has to be something that's going to be bigger or smaller based on some information. So here's the information. The first theorem that you will have to learn in this section is theorem 5.3.1. 5.3.1. And this is what the theorem says. I'm going to read it for you and then we're going to write on the board. The measure of an exterior angle of a triangle is greater than the measure of either remote interior angles. Okay? So what is it saying? The measure, so the exterior angles, all right, so let's think about it. So the exterior angles are going to be what? This is going to be what? Bigger or smaller than 1 and 2? 1 and 2. Well, think about this for a second. In order for x to exist, we had to add these two together. So in order to add those together, that means one of these had to be at least 1, and this one had to be less, whatever that is. So therefore, we would know that the exterior angle is always going to be greater than the remote interior. Okay? So looking at it again, making sure you understand. If it's an outside angle, the remote interior to that exterior angle are always going to be smaller than the exterior angle. So the first theorem you'll learn is exterior angle inequality. In other words, anytime you see an angle out here, you can know that it's going to be bigger than those two there. Okay? That's important. That's important step number 1. Second thing you need to learn. Second thing. And this is theorem 5.3.2. Theorem 5.3.2. And it says this. The two sides of a triangle are not congruent. The two sides of a triangle that are not congruent. The larger is opposite the larger side. The larger angle is opposite the larger side. So in other words, remember, going back to our isosceles triangle, think about this. Remember, when these were congruent, we had equal angles. What this is simply saying in this lesson, this one, greater angle theorem, all it's saying is the bigger the angle, the bigger the angle, bigger the side. So if I have a triangle here, now let me exaggerate it so that we can make sure to get him right here. Okay, so Here we go. We're going to name them 1, 2, 3. Which side is the smallest? Which side is the smallest? 1. So this angle is going to be the smallest. So what would be the second smallest? Good. And so the second smallest angle would be here. And 3 would be across from the biggest, the largest. And that's very straightforward. Should be something to understand and help you understand the concept. All right? Number 3, third thing you need to learn. Third thing you need to learn is longer side inequality theorem. 5.3.3. 5.3.3. Let me read it to you. If two angles of a triangle are not congruent, then the longer side is opposite the larger angle. So here we go. Bigger side. What does that mean? Then bigger angle. Good. All right. So these two are reversed to each other. And by the way, you should have learned that by now that a lot of times when you have one theorem, you'll have the other. All right. So those are the theorems you have to remember and study and learn. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to go to a problem. So good example. Here we go. Let's do a problem. If I have the board here, 50, 64, 66. Which, and I'm going to name them 1, 2, 4, 3. Tell me which side in order is the smallest. The smallest, across from 50. So 3. The next smallest would be 2. And the last smallest would be 1. Because why? The angles. As the angles get bigger, the sides get bigger, etc. All right? Any questions? So that's what you're going to do in that lesson. Hope you understand it. Have a good day. Enjoy listening.